So I'll tell you a bit about my background. While we know each other for almost more than 10 years now, but I come from the eastern part of the country where I was originally born and brought up. So I was born and brought up in Calcutta. And I was in an all-boys school. And all-boys school has certain pros, certain cons, right? So I grew up with that whole thought process of adrenaline being pumped up. You have to compete. You have to ensure that one-upmanship is there. Boys are like, boss, hum mard hai, hame aage jana hai. All that nonsense was there. But parallelly, I came from a background where in East, there is a lot of matriarchal importance given. Women are treated equal, and you're brought up with that mindset to say that women have always been equal or perhaps a little more superior as well. So even though it was an all-boys school for me, we always knew at the end of the day that life is, and perhaps it's helped me a lot in terms of how I built my entire life around the thought process, and today as an entrepreneur, how that also showcases in my firm, that it's always equal footing. But that's been my background. Tell us about yours, your childhood. Where were you from? What did you do? Where were you born? What was schooling like? What do you remember? What do you carry forward from those thought processes?
You're really taking me back in time. And, when you're asking these questions, I'm like, that's a long way back. But no, I mean, it's so good to relive those memories as well. So to begin with, while I was born in Bangalore, to very middle class family, my dad used to work in the Middle East. As soon as I was born, we were shipped off to Saudi. And that's where my dad used to work. I have very, very happy memories of my childhood there. That time we were in Jeddah, and it was a far more liberal place. So I had some fantastic time going to the beach, and the play areas, the kind of parks that they had. We made some great friends. So being from a very close-knit South Indian family, the fact that we were exposed to many expat Indians who used to go there to work of different backgrounds was fantastic, right?
I remember you telling me, Kaushik, and you were at times, I think you were childhood neighbors in one of those places.
Yes, so our dads were colleagues.
And what a small world.
Yes, and our mums are friends, and we kind of knew him. My brother used to bully the hell out of Kaushik. I don't know how or why.
I have to take that back to him. Huh?
Yes, it's embarrassing, some of the stories that I get to hear. But yeah, and so it was a great place growing up, because you got to see different backgrounds of people, different communities. And then, of course, many of them came back to India, started their own. So my dad came back and he started as an entrepreneur, which back in the day was a really brave thing to do. This was in 84, 85.
Tell us a bit about that. What was that entrepreneurial stint about? Because that perhaps was your first taste to understanding what entrepreneurship is about.
Yeah. No, I think a lot of who I am today is because of my dad and the kind of things that he did. Unfortunately, I lost him very early.
I'm aware of that.
But
and I'm going to talk about that as well. I know it's sensitive to you, but I will talk about it.
Yeah, it's always sensitive, right? Like losing a person is always hard.
But at a young age especially.
And at a young, impressionable age, right? And when he came from a very, very agriculture family. So grew up going to government schools, studying in Kannada, which was the local language, right?
So you're a digger?
Yes, I'm a digger.
Yeah. Interesting.
And for him, he had to move out of his village to study engineering. So he was in a hostel while his education was going on. And he pretty much kind of paved his path in such a fantastic manner that, of course, he was the first one in the family to take the plunge to fly out of his comfort zone.
And that would have also taken so much of guts, because उस time पे आपको पहला thought process ये होता है कि यार जहाँ आप sheltered हो, जहाँ आप protected हो, आप वहीं पे रहो, वहीं पे कुछ करो.
Absolutely.
But you're looking at a completely foreign jurisdiction, a different country. A lot of gut call to take that as well.
I don't even know what he was going through at that point in time, because obviously language was a barrier. He was extremely talented, very hardworking. So he went on to work for one of the large architecture firms back in Jeddah. And I knew he used to moonlight at that point in time. He used to double hat for double income. So he had a salary coming in, but on the side, he had a side hustle going on. And I knew we used to see him late at night sitting and doing work so that he can deliver that as well and do this. So we've never seen anything come easy, right? Like we know that only hard work can get us somewhere. So, and that was it. And then in 84, I don't know what happened. He decided we are leaving all this and we are going back to Bangalore and I'm going to set up my own, which was a very brave thing to do back in the day, right? And a lot of people question him that why would you do that? You're having a good life back there, good income, good education for kids and all. And he said, no, I'll come back and I'll ensure that my kids get better education in India and they will do better there. And so that was, my growing up, what I saw of him. And he was an extremely hardworking professional. And he built something really big back in the day. It was an engineering consulting firm, which was a very unique concept then.
Correct.
That time the real estate boom in India had just about started. So he was working with the who's who of the real estate industry. And that's what we saw growing up. So even today, it's a matter of pride when we drive down in Bangalore, many of the big old buildings, they had his contribution in it.
So he had a role to play.
He had a big role to play. He was the one who designed them. In fact, the Bombay Diamond Bourse, that was a project he was doing. So he was of that stature when it came to engineering. Unfortunately, he passed early. But what he's left behind is a huge legacy for all of, like we can't fill those shoes. So we just try. So what you're seeing of me is just a small part of what he was. So yeah.
So, and since we are talking, I'll dive into this straight away. When you say he passed early, how old were you?
I was in grade 9.
So that's really tender, very important.
I was in 9 and my brother was in 6 and this was, I know this was during our summer vacations. So we had gone for a holiday and you know how it can be, right? Like people, there was a lovely river flowing and they all jumped into the river. We didn't realize that it was one of the more dangerous rivers to go into and he got sucked away. So it was hard.
It was very hard. It was very hard. I can imagine. In fact, I don't even want to, but it's insane. So one thought about how these things impact, right? There are a lot of aspects where sometimes the impact can also be in a way positive, in a way obviously most people will say it will be negative. Some people can go across and factor things in a manner which is extremely strong, and some can perhaps completely clasp down and come into a shell. I have seen you evolve as a very strong and a very independent person. So I'm sure you have some aspects of takeaway from that as well. What could you say were the core impacts? It's a very hard question, but what could you say is a core impact?
You know, Vinayak, that's a very hard question to answer. And also, you know, I think who I am today and many things about me are because of that one incident in life. And it didn't just affect me, it affected my family, which is my mother and my brother, very differently, right? So what I saw as an output in me was very different in what happened to my brother and what happened to my mother. So there's obviously a lot of takeaways from this. And, you know, while of course it was a very stressful and traumatic event in my life, you know, I think I'm quite proud of where I have gotten, right? Because a lot of things happened in me, got rewired because of that one event in life. Who I was as a person before and after, there was like a huge shift.
180-degree shift.
In personality type also. So I used to be a very reticent girl, used to be very quiet. Like even today, I don't think many of my school friends would even know I existed. That was the kind of person I was. Very in my shell, very, you know, very content. In certain
I can relate
things.
to it.
You know, I was very happy. I didn't have big aspirations.
A phase of my life was exactly like that. So I was a complete recluse.
Yeah, so I was like that. I would never participate in anything. I would never push myself to do anything beyond what was required. You know, I was like a middling student. Yeah, 60% very good. I mean,
मतलब just surviving. I used to call it the surviving mode. I exist, but
Yeah.
there's no element beyond that.
absolutely. And there was nothing for me to look forward to. And that was how life was. And suddenly, this event happened. And I was suddenly the older sister, had to be more responsible, and nobody asked me to do this.
Comes naturally.
It's just there,
Yeah.
right? Like I have to look out for my brother, I have to look out for my mother.
You're
And
no more the child anymore.
Yes.
The childhood goes away
So
very quickly.
that day I stopped being a child. And that was like a game changer, right? Like then I became a more aggressive person. I started going out there. I started figuring out what works, what doesn't. And I started putting myself a lot more out, right? Like, you know, what I want to do, where will it get me, what will it do for me. I started becoming a lot more sharper about people. Like before, they were just there, but then now I was
And there was
more
protection,
aware.
right? Now the protection, the
Yes.
shield is gone.
Yes. And you know, it was different because it's not like we needed financial protection. My dad left us enough and more. But what my mum did was she was smart. It could have, you know, really backfired in a bad way if I had assumed that, oh, I have everything
Yeah.
with me, you know,
Yeah,
life
yeah,
is
yeah.
easy anyways. She never, ever made us know how much we have. I remember.
And that's so important.
It is so important because I used to only get like $1,000 pocket money when I was in engineering, right? Which meant I had to fill fuel into my kinetic Honda, manage my affairs in that $1,000, and for that I had to go stand in a post office to withdraw that money, right? So it was a very important lesson for me that maybe I didn't have much, so I had to really work hard for it. Today, when she tells what all he's left behind, I was like, damn, why didn't you tell us, right? Like life could have been easier. But yeah, that was
But you know, easiness also brings in entitlement.
Yes.
And I think what she also did was protect you from the evil of entitlement.
Yes.
Because that, I think, is the biggest lead sinker in all our lives.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
For me now, and for my audience, the key takeaway here is that life can bring in things which is completely outside your control. It can bring in things which are the most horrendous. बहुत ही अजीब हो सकता है, बहुत ही दर्दनाक हो सकता है, बहुत ही it can be very, very struggle oriented. संघर्ष बहुत ज़्यादा हो सकता है. But there are two ways of looking at it. One way is that you engulf yourself उस हादसे में, उस situation में और बोल दो कि यार यही है and you completely clasp down and shut down. और बोलो life इसके बाद कुछ बनाने लायक नहीं रहा. Or like what Sushma is saying, you know, it also takes you out to the next level to say कि perhaps अब और मेरे पास कोई साधना नहीं है, कोई उपाय नहीं है. I have no other option but to go across and start surviving, but not surviving, but now living. Because the only way you can live is when you break the barriers, and that's where the early breaking of the barriers start.
Yeah.
You know, so to my mind, and I remember this very clearly, Manoj Muntashir साहब के कुछ शब्द है, and this moment tells that. कहते हैं, सलाम करते हैं रास्ते उस मुसाफिर को, सलाम करते हैं रास्ते उस मुसाफिर को, जिस मुसाफिर के पाँव में हर रोज नए छाले होते हैं.
अरे वाह.
सलाम करते हैं रास्ते उस मुसाफिर को, जिस मुसाफिर के पाँव में हर रोज नए छाले होते हैं. मैं भरने नहीं दूंगा अपने दिल की दरारों को, मैं भरने नहीं दूंगा अपने दिल की दरारों को, इन दरारों से मुझ में उजाले होते हैं.
Beautiful. So well said.
So that is how this kind of a situation happens. Right?
Yeah.